Yes.
Continue.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so before we start tonight, I just want to point out a few admin. Tonight, the session is being recorded. And at the end of the presentation, we'll be able to answer any questions you may have regarding the exhibit. And there's a Q&A box on top of your Zoom screen. So if there's any questions during the session, please feel free to type in the question and we'll try to answer it at the end of the session. I'm Alisa Skilton and I'm one of the club members at the NYU Alumni Club in Hong Kong. And I'll be your moderator tonight. And I'm proud to present to you Professor Jian-Jun Zhang and Professor Barbara Edelstein, both clinical associate professors at the Professor of Arts at NYU, Shanghai. So they have just presented a joint exhibit with Alisan Fine Arts in Hong Kong named Ineffable Garden. I had the privilege to take a video tour and would like to invite the alumni who have not been able to see it yet to have the opportunity to see it now. So if we can put the video on.
Okay, I'm sharing the screen with the video.
Welcome to Alisan Fine Arts in Ineffable Garden by Jian-Jun Zhang and Barbara Edelstein. For this exhibition, the Chinese ink painter Jian-Jun Zhang and American multimedia artist Barbara Edelstein have collaborated together to express their personal relationships with the natural world through a garden curated here in Alisan Fine Arts. Jian-Jun's fascination with water is reflected in works from the Flowing Water series and Robin Rain series, as seen showcased here in the gallery. With his Ink Rock series, he further depicts his investigation into the integration of culture and nature and the deeper sense of time that acts as a medium between the two. Alongside, we see Barbara Edelstein's own exploration in complex membranes and structures of leaves and organic life. Using photography, ink, sculpture, and 3D artworks, she translates her observations with a distinctive beauty.
Okay. Did we lose Alisa?
Great, thank you so much. So would you start stories behind this dual solo?
Our work is different from each other, but we share a focus on the unification of the world and express this desire in very unique ways, with different than each other. The title, Ineffable Garden, becomes an expression of this unity of the world, but it is beyond language, beyond culture. And that's why we think this works very well together.
Thank you. So Professor Edelstein, the way that you use multimedia artwork to explore the structures and forms of leaves are very interesting. We noticed your use of nature images, but not only in the aesthetic way, but in other works not in this show. You have a dialogue between nature and social historical concerns. Would you share more stories about where these ideas came from?
Okay, I'm going to share with you a PPT, a PowerPoint, so you can see some of the images of my work, the ones in the show, and a few others. So I will share my screen, and there you go. So, let's see if, wait. Okay. This is a quote from Gloria Orenstein that she wrote about one of the shows I've done, but it's about my work. It's like nature writing a poem to the viewer in its own language. And this captured so much of what my work is. It's very poetic, it's about nature, but it's in nature's language. It's not in our human words. So this is one of the pieces in the show. So these are works in the show. These are drawings that I've done. It's Chinese ink, it's photographs. They're all looking at these leaves, these lotus, but from the same eye, but a different way of looking. But looking at the structure, looking at the almost abstraction of them. And I'd like, when you look at a leaf, whether it's this leaf or these are duos that I show at the gallery, the leaf encompasses a tree. The tree encompasses a forest, and the forest becomes the world. By working with leaves, I'm actually working with a microcosm of the world, but it is the whole world. It's really a play between reality and imagination with poetry. So I'm focusing on leaves, but this is a unifying of the world. And there's a few of them. So it's really looking at our world and the beauty of it. And when we talk about nature as separate from humans, there's not that dichotomy. I don't feel that dichotomy. And it comes from, it's very Taoist. It's quite, I studied Zen Buddhism. I read about Taoism in high school, so there was that influence. But this is very much we're always trying to make us think about the viewer, look at the world and notice it. And then in a very ecological way, not destroy it, because if we appreciate something, we won't destroy it. And it's also just the beauty, the poetic quality. So these are individual drawings. I'm really playing with the ink. The ink is it's Chinese ink. It's a very particular Chinese ink. And I love working with the ink. I've used ink in my life. I've always liked using ink more than other materials. So when I came to China, it was even more natural. And in using leaves from around the world, it's another way of unifying the world. These are leaves that Daphne chose for the show. It's not that I started doing this just recently. This is from 1991. I was a resident in a MacDowell art colony in New Hampshire, and I was doing these drawings of lines outside my window every day. And again, it's the simplicity and it's the beauty of the line. And it's almost a calligraphic line. It's almost, Cao Shu is my favorite form of calligraphy. And it relates very much to that. There's another one from that series. So these are also ink on watercolor paper. Another aspect of my work is installation. This is a piece I did at PS1 in New York, which is associated with MoMA at this time. It's a place where artists get a studio for a year and you're juried in. And this was an installation. So people walked into this and I called it Il Segreto Nascosto Sotto I Rami, the secret hidden under the trees. And in the next slide, you can see from the ends of the piping, the tree branches, water was flowing. So it was very active and flowing into the pools. All of this metal is recycled. So it was another way of using recycled, reusing material, but creating now from an industrial corrugated steel and piping, making it back into nature. And here you can see the water. And this is putting up another one of the installations. And this is a piece I did. It was installed in Santa Monica Mall in California, in LA. And it also had water, and there was a companion piece. So this was being done at a factory. This is a work that I did in Hangzhou in Westlake for the second Shihu International Sculpture Exhibition. When I do a site work, and I've done a number of them in China and in the world, I go to the place and I really look at what's there. I had been to Hangzhou before. When they asked me to come up with a piece for this, I remember the old gnarled trees around Westlake, which I loved, and the willow trees. So I used that image to come up with something, and I said, this has to be in the lake, and it has to have flowing water. So this is about 3 meters high.
Wow.
And there it is on a less foggy day. This work is another one in China, a public work. This was in front of the VIP entrance of the Guangdong Museum of Art. And it's copper again, water. And when I was asked to do this work, Jian-Jun and I went to the museum and we walked around. And the image that was in my head was really the palm trees that are there. But they were different than the palm trees I grew up with in LA. And this image stuck with me. So when I went back to work on it and play with this image, I came up with this work. And it, at this point, is probably very green because it is copper and it patinas, which is lovely. And this is a night view of it. This is a work that's in Jing'an International Sculpture Park. It was installed in 2010. It's quite active, it's there. It's about 5 meters high. And again, when I went to the park, there were vines and there were actually willow leaves. So I took those images and I played with them. It's copper, it's bronze, and of course water, and it's always, the water is always flowing. Water is very active in my work. It's a very active element in the public work, and water is life. So, and it very much activates the sculpture, the place around it, and it's lovely to use, but it's, you know, with the sculptures. And here is giving you a sense of scale, a lovely little girl watching.
Wow.
This is an installation I did at the Himalaya Art Museum at their opening show. So there were 3 sculptures, and you can see one was based on, was in connection in the same series as the outdoor one. I mean, you can see 2 of them. And then behind is a video, which is now playing at the gallery. And it's of the patterns of the shadows of branches on the old walls of the garden for lingering in Suzhou. But it's just this it's part of a series I've been doing of things, shadows of trees, of leaves moving in the wind. And when you think about it, that movement, wind is qi, is the energy of the world. And by recording the shadow movement of the wind, I'm actually recording chi. Excuse me. So these are stills from the video. You see all different patterns, but it was all shot at the Lingering Garden. I don't know, what is the Chinese name?
西园.
西园.
The Zen is a Zen garden.
Zen Garden. Here's another way I used that video with another work that was actually a bonsai that I had ink flowing from into a pool. So instead of water, now it's ink. It became very Chinese. A bonsai to me is very Chinese. And it was, so this is not the shadow of the bonsai, this is the video, but I showed it together at the Dolan Museum of Art 2 years ago. Here's another view. This is an installation I did at the Mingyuan Art Center, and when I was asked to do a work in this, it was a huge space. It was 18 meters. I wanted to make something that it's a Chinese landscape. It's a landscape, but it's moving. And these are ink drawings. Each of the leaves on these branches are ink drawings, but you can walk in this space. And when you walk in it, because everything is hanging by your movement, by the air that you're pushing, the branches start moving. So you're actually walking into a Chinese ink landscape. So it's my way of referring back to the Chinese tradition that I find here, but in my own contemporary way, my own way. The branches, I gave them new leaves, I gave them new life. And it also becomes very calligraphic. Here's another view. And this is the last work that I'm going to show you today, to talk about. Again, I used leaves, but this was called Immigrant Leaves. And I was invited to this show of women. It's at the Frauen Museum, the Women's Museum in Bonn, Germany. And it was artists whose family had to immigrate or emigrate due to political situations. My family were Jewish, and we left the family, my grandparents' generation left Poland and Russia, or some of them did not survive. But it was the idea that I was talking about the Jews around the world have a connection to each other. Jewish women have a connection to each other, even though we're spread all over the world. And I use the image of the leaf, the fig leaf, because that's in the Bible, in Deuteronomy. And I said, oh wait, so here, and stepping stones because you're walking, you're leaving. But here's some close-ups. So it's the positive or negative of the fig leaf. And you can see I used some Israeli matzah, but there's a Korean pillow and an African bag and a playbill from the Sisters Rosenzweig in New York. Money from different countries, the movie Exodus, maps for money, for moving, because Jews have gone all around the world and have assimilated into their culture, but there's still something that there's some identity. And an Iranian newspaper. Oh, this is the last work. This is in the show. These works are in the show. The two side leaves are about 1/2 meter wide. They're silicone rubber and stainless steel. And they're another way of using the shape of leaves, which is this universal you know, it's all around the world. We find leaves and we find different, it's a differentiation, but they're all together. And then the wonderful color.
Wow. Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Edelstein. That was fascinating. The installations are huge. They're some of them.
Yes.
So I have a question also for Professor Zhang. I know that your Rubbing Rain, Flowing Water, and First Drop of Water series draw upon your fascination with water. And for almost all your career, your work focuses on nature and metaphysics. But you also work with human issues. For example, last year you had a show at the Royal Academy of Arts in London titled Human Traces. What is the connection between that work and the works in this show? Can you share with us a little bit about them, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So when I was in the 80s or when I was young, I think the Taoism and Zen strongly influenced and influential and in art. And in Taoism, nature and people never separate. It's unified as one. So even in my earlier career time and during the 80s, beginning of the 80s, I started working on abstract paintings, metaphysics works, but also there are some artworks using human. But of course, this human, not necessarily like one portrait or one person or some story. It's an overall like a survey a human being. So that's you mentioned the one solo show I did last year in Royal Academy. It titled the Human Traces, but it's again it's about people. And later I can show you some images here. From my PPT here, I start the ink rock, which is this piece showed at the Alisan Fine Art Gallery now. And so the rock, it's in Chinese tradition, the rock, it's a scholar rock. It's because that's what the people, how we understood how the relationship with nature. So that's as a mountain. So, but this one, instead of directly I use the stone, but I transfer, get into the ink. So that's emphasize the cultural, the sense. Because I want to show this one is I did this installation in Shanghai, the 4th of Shanghai Biennale, Shanghai Biennial in Shanghai Art Museum. So that one called Ink Garden of Recreation. And big ink rock and a few small, and also this floor, I collect some old bricks from the village to turn down this the very old Ming Dynasty house and temple. I bought that and then making a garden and rock and then the old floor. And so this one small rock in further, you will see the sitting on top of the tank with water. So the water, I set up the pump inside the sculpture. So the water speak out from the sculpture, the ink rock, day by day, gradually melt this or change the shape of this the sculpture. So in the beginning, the clear water, more gradually, the solid ink to the liquid, and slowly change. So whole idea is because when I left China in the later in later 80s, and then when I first time come back to visit, it's in between have 6 years. So that's a big gap. For me, it's a very strong visual impact because everything changing. Old to new, West, East, tradition, modern. There's sometimes during that time not really transition smoothly, like crash together. I thought that's like, you know, very interesting, fascinating. That's as artists, I want to see, I want to deal with the moment. And that's a really strong, I don't want to do artwork, like conceptual art, a lot of artists, conceptual art, just like put a note. I want to find a visual image. So that's I did a lot of those work. That's the sketch for the for my installation. And of course, you just mentioned water. Yeah, water, flowing water, and also first drop water and the rubbing rain. So water is really like besides the elements for the water, because also water is a very philosophical thoughts, and also most interest is the transition. They always follow the surrounding change of the shape. That's it's fascinating. So that's I got a lot of inspiration and from the beginning of my career. So again, I use the oil pen and ink on rice paper over the canvas. So that's how I start this technique since mid of the 80s, 84, I think. Yeah, some of the water, flowing water series, and you will see that's a calligraphy and abstraction or realism at the same time. And that's one thing I very obviously I deal with like eternal end of the moments and or poetic realism and the metaphysics. So that's the contrast. I thought that's like fascinating me because when I do this rubbing rain, and then the rain, of course, you cannot physical to rub, but the rubbing, it's a very, can be very poetic way to see that. So this one I did 2011 in LA on the side of the beach, rubbing sun. So I used traditional rubbing technique, and there's a rice paper, and of course the fishing line that can hold on the paper floating in the air, and two of my assistant hold on the pole. So I'm making taobao, like very traditional taobao. Instead, you know, if we went to Xi'an, we know that's they have the rubbing the stone. So, but instead of taobao, dip in ink, I dip in water. So before the sun down, so I tracing and rubbing the sun behind. So once the water got wet on the paper, so this you see the pattern, the light, sunlight can flow with them paper. So like the process, and then about 20 minutes, the sun down, and of course, when I stop and the water evaporate, the images disappeared gradually. So, but we know next day sun gonna rise again, and we know human, we involved, we still can leave a mark, some sentence. So that's again, I think my Taoism influence is there, and then you know that's why the title. I mean, in English I call performance, but in Chinese I say 人的参与. As human participant, we are part of it, and very tiny. So at the same time, instead I did a rubbing sun, it's come and goes. But this one, I using the tradition like a hammer. At first, I collect a big stone, and I, like ancient artist chisel, and on the stone, and then I put a piece of rice paper over, and then rub. So that's a rubbing sun. That's in traditional way, or in the eternal way. The others come and go in. So that's the same concept. Rubbing rain series. Again, Chinese ink, rice paper, oil pen on canvas. Yeah, those this first drop of water series, and so the first drop of water, again, can be tiny, can be a phenomenon big in the beginning of the universe. So that's again tiny and small and big. And philosophical, metaphysics, and also realism, the poetic realism at the same time. So that's the details. Yes, that's, well, I want to, since I talk about the work, how linked to my early work. This one I did in 1982, called Eternal Dialogues. And I used the nature material, some clay stone, and directly on canvas. And there's a two symbol, people say the sun or moon, or whatever I can say, the transition movement, but in the very childish way to draw, depended on it, because that's kind of like the market from the human beings, and of course, this one, 20 years after 82, yeah, that's 82, 84, this one, 83, I put this work with my work showed at the 83 experimental art exhibition in Fudan University, and also, of course, open half day be closed. And then I get criticized because say my work is too bourgeois, but I refuse to do self-criticism because I say this is a Chinese tradition. Of course, they don't listen to me. So after 20 years, of course, everything changed. So the museum reopened the show, and then happened Art America report exhibition. And so that's my first Drop of Water series, which is in Alisan Fine Arts show now. And before we mentioned human being, and so this one is 1987, and I did a huge oil painting. This one only oil on canvas. Human being with their clock. So here, people from different ethnic, from West, from Chinese, and people standing on the ground. But of course, people think that's a realism, but I thought that's also like a metaphysics way, because you will see the light source are different. So we seem in the one place, but we all individually questioning or wondering, and there's one object in further the horizontal, and that's if you see clear, there's one mark on this object. It's a 3579. It's Rome structure. It's time. It's a we always, no matter people. When we was young, was little, I look at the sky in the night, and we see the stars, see some unknown, see the mysterious, and then those feelings, I believe, people from 10,000 years ago, or today, or even people in 10,000 years after, if we still survive, the same thing, same question, because there's something beyond us. We can't. So that's. The art magazine published this work in China at that time. And this one I did last year in London. And so that's the human traces. And again, here in London, I thought there's so many people from so many different places, like in New York. So I thought about this project. I invite people, or I met the people in the street and or in the parties, to invite the people to be part of this installation. And what I did, I want to create an archaeology site, and the people portrait people from different background, and also I give people, all the participants, 3 questions for each one, and then record their voices. So their voices is a part of apply the voices in this space. So the three question is, what is your happiest experience in your life? And second is, what is your saddest experience in your life? That's very personal. The third one is, what do you want to say to people in 100 years in the future? So want to link from now, what we face, to the future. And so that's the interesting, like people talking about their personal life, and also what they want to talk to people in the future. And it's happen is it's which is out of my control, but it's happened is that a lot of people talk about ecology. And so that's the way I was thinking. Maybe like I try to set up the installation, bring people stay afar and looking down to survey ourselves, survey our concern, where we came from, where we're going. And it's anything, we came from people from different, but any possible, we can share similarity, something, some way. So, and after the show, during the show, this journalist in London interviewed me, and then she said, you ask people, what do you do? What do you want to say to the people in 100 years? I said, fix the Earth as beautiful as it used to be before we move to Mars. So that's another water I called Chat as Rock, Play with Water. I did installation performance, and then there's a video, the video of water. Some images shot from Suzhou Creek or London or in Germany or New York, many different water line movement, and some water images from painting, from a Chinese tradition, from a international painting water. And during the time, I used the brush dipped in the water to draw on the paper, which is I made the paper draw looks like an ink painting, but the water, once the water evaporates, the ink, the line disappeared. But the video always moving on with so this is one on Wu Dai's water, the other is Van Gogh's water. Once the images show, I copy the images with different style. But of course the video, sometimes the 1 minute, sometimes 20 seconds move. So I may change another line, but of course when I draw the mark on left, so connected with the video. So always the water moving never had the same moment. So the water from nature, from a human together. So, and I also, oh, sorry, touched to us. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, just the same. And there's an installation also, I invite one poet and one musician. So we improvise. And then sometimes I draw a few lines, and then one musician play, not really music, play a sound, or the poet come up a word or sentence about the reflection about the nature or culture, or how we walking into the garden, walking into the landscape. And this is a mountain, not just yellow mountain, not just Fuchunjiang, but that's really covered, because from a past to current, from east to west, is our word. We walk through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Zhang. Very fascinating how you combine everything and transfer it into a piece of art. But how did you guys decide to choose Hong Kong and especially Alisan Fine Arts to exhibit your installations and artwork? And if you have any future exhibits coming up, please let us know as well.
Sure, yeah. Of course, Alisan Fine Art Gallery is always focused on the contemporary ink art and traditional contemporary ink art. And also more and more include experimental ink art, which is fascinating. Which is a cover. It's a connected with Barbara's work, my work perfectly, and so we are very honored have those opportunity to show the gallery. And also I want to say, since you asked the question, I have a long history relationship with the Alisan Fine Art Gallery, because Mrs. King, the founder from Alisan Fine Arts, in 1987, she came to Shanghai. She organized an exhibition called some translation of contemporary art from Shanghai. So include my work showed at the Hong Kong Art Center. So after that, since then, I have a very, very good relationship experience with the Alisan Fine Art Gallery, and with Mrs. King, and also now it's Daphne. So yeah, that's some.
Great. How it all comes in full circle after all these years. By the way, is Daphne able to introduce the gallery? Is she available to introduce Alice?
I don't know if you can see me.
Yes, we can. Hi, Daphne.
Hi everyone. Thank you for organizing this talk and doing the virtual tour of the exhibition. So I guess just very briefly, the background of our gallery, we were established, as Jian-Jun mentioned, in the 1980s, in 1981 in Hong Kong. And at the time, we were really one of the first galleries in Hong Kong. And Alice King, who he mentioned was my mother, is my mother. So she was really, had a very pioneering spirit at that time to had the foresight to really establish a gallery that focused on contemporary Chinese art. And when the gallery first started, because China was not that open at the time, we focused on a lot of overseas Chinese artists, people such as Wallace Ting, Zhao Qi, Zhu Dechun, who kind of left China in the first generation of artists who left China in the 1950s. And then as China began to open up a little bit more, we organized this exhibition that JJ had just mentioned in 1987. It was called The State of Transition, and it focused on, I think there were maybe like close to 20 Shanghai artists, and Zhang Jian-Jun was one of them. And since then, we've continued to, keep in touch with him. We organized another show, I think when it was actually our gallery's 30th anniversary, with Asian Cultural Council, which is a nonprofit organization that gave Zhang Jian-Jun a grant to go to New York to be able to study and learn about his Western art. And he ended up staying in New York after receiving that grant to further his artistic career. But in, I think it was 2011 when we held this exhibition for our gallery's 30th anniversary, he was one of the artists that we kind of revisited and relooked at and showcased in this exhibition. And then, more recently, we're again working together. So like you said, it's kind of come full circle, which has been really nice. And our gallery's kind of morphed into, he was mentioning that we focus on Chinese contemporary ink and a lot of experimental ink. So, being able to show Barbara and JJ's work together in this gallery is kind of like the perfect fit for us. So we're really excited to be able to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for actually offering to host a private tour for the NYU alums next Tuesday, June 2nd from 6:30 to 7:30. And there is going to be a limit to the number of participants that can sign up for this. So for everyone that wants to RSVP, the information is on the slide, who you can email to to attend this private tour. And we do have a few questions that we have some time for. The first question is for Barbara, and it's from Felipe De Lucio. And his question is, what would you say to people in 100 years, Barbara?
Oh, I hope that we can all get along. I mean, we're all humans and we're all creatures of this world, and we're all together. If we destroy the world, there's nothing for anyone and any creature and any plants and anything. So I hope by then we have worked out our differences and realized that it's one universe, it's one world.
How about you, Professor Dunn? I know one of your installations was, you asked your participants in that human traces. One of your questions was also.
Yeah, I did answer to the journalists, and what I said is fix the Earth, our planet, fix as beautiful as it used to be before we move to Mars.
Yes, that's right. That's a very, very good way to put it. And I actually have a question for Barbara. How long did it take for you to build some of these humongous installations, like the 5-meter one with that little girl next to it?
The way you showed me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there was a conception of it. Going to the, once I was asked, and there was the conception of doing the model. And then what was your question? How long?
How long you build up?
How long? And then, of
Yeah.
course, China, so things take a lot
three
less.
months.
So it took 3 months to do from a small model to the leaf had to be built in clay and then cast. So it had to be life size, real size.
Mhm.
And then the vine ball, root ball.
You used like over 300 meters
of copper.
the copper pot.
Wow.
So that was again a small model that then we worked on and built up,
Mm-hmm.
to get all the, then there was the installation. And of course, getting the waterworks. And it was lovely because we set it there, and when they were doing the installation, we blocked it for a while when they were building the pool, and then we set it. And then when we got the water, we installed the water pump, we got everything connected, and we filled it, and it worked. And by then it's China, and there's a big crowd, and everyone cheered, and
The neighbors, all the
neighborhood.
neighbors.
Wow.
They love it. They saw it with water. The
Water.
trees,
And
the
they
lime.
really came up to me and said, this is our park, and we love what you did, because what if you put something in and they hate it? But this is their center. So it was very gratifying, and I always get lovely talk. Even the guards remember me, and they point out if I happen to visit, if someone's looking at, oh, that's the artist, and then.
Oh, that's very sweet. And what would you say the hardest material you've worked with in terms of building these?
I think I love working with copper because it's actually, for a metal, it's soft.
Mhm.
It's still very hard, but it's softer, and it has a wonderful patina. Casting bronze is, to me, more, because it's not quite as direct. It's more, and then there's patinas, and it's more complicated process. And then, I've worked, the first piece I did was in corrugated steel. So each one has its benefits and more difficult parts. But there's something about, I was a dancer, and I think working doing an environment or something that's big enough that it relates to us physically, doing an installation, and that's why I love doing installations that you walk in. And when I'm doing them, it's actually, how does my body feel in this? Where do I put something is it a tight space? Is it an open space? How how it relates to us as a physical being is very much a part of it. So my dance background comes in very much when I'm doing installation. When you're walking on, I put coal cinders on the floor, again, recycled materials from PS1, and it's your feet telling you something. I put corrugated metal on the floor, so it's your feet off balance and how that affects your body. So an installation and sculpture is very much a physical, it's not just your visual, but and with the water, it's the sound. So it encompasses a lot of your senses.
Interesting, very fascinating. So, we are very glad this was extended because, we tried to arrange a tour earlier in April, I think, or March, but then everything was going on. So it's nice that Alisan Gallery has extended this exhibition. So we're looking forward to the tour next Tuesday, Daphne. Will you be there? Is she online?
Yeah, she has to unmute.
Yes, I will be here. So I look forward to welcoming.
Okay, great. We look forward to seeing you and the beautiful artwork.
Yep, I look forward to sharing it with everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been
Thank you so much.
me too.
Yeah.
And thank you for everyone that came to listen to this talk. Oh, I think, yeah. Thank you for organizing, Xing, and putting everything together. Oh, by the way, there's one more question if we have for Professor Zhang. Where do you source your ink and paper? And do you ever make your own?
The paper, of course, I didn't make it my own, but I work with a paper maker. So I can ask, I want a particular, sometimes I want very thin, but I need it strong because my technique, when I painted the oil and back and I painted ink on rice paper, and then I mount over oil pen. So that partially translucent, but partially it's the layers. And then sometimes I painted again on this rice paper. So you will see that the oil and the ink somehow overlap, so mixed. But otherwise I cannot paint the ink over oil pen. So in that way, I special order the paper, or sometimes I need the paper more sensible reflect to the ink, or sometimes I wanted the paper more rough. And the ink, yes, I asked. Also, I went to the Anhui, this traditional ink factory. So there's the factory, the worker, they can make some special technique for the artists. So I actually, not only me, I believe many artists, many painters, they did have those relationship with factories.
Ah, very nice. Well, thank you again, Professor Zhang and Professor Edelstein. And for those of you who cannot attend the private tour, there will be, the session is recorded, so we will be putting the link onto the social media sites. And do you guys have a website or a way to contact you guys? Or is there a website you guys have for your artwork?
Yes, page that we've never done.
Yeah,
the last time I tried it was 2005. I tried to work on it and I never, so we're very bad at, we don't have.
We're dinosaurs.
We're dinosaurs. We don't have WeChat. We don't have Instagram. We don't have, we're dinosaurs.
No, we're not against, first of all,
So we're just gonna have to track you down live.
Against a contemporary tag, of course, but what we realize, everyone have 24 hours, and how we divide time. So as our, there's a lot of physical, because we are, working, and mostly we're working ourselves, and unless sometimes need assistance for sculpture. Otherwise, that's need a layer by layer spend time. So research or painting. So we spend most time in our studio.
Yeah. So Contact Daphne.
Okay.
Gallery does have a website, and it definitely has images and information and the biography of both Professor Edelstein and Professor Zhang. So if anyone wants to find out more details, our website link, it's www.alisan, it's alisan.com.hk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's the way to work.
Great. Yes, we're.
There we go. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night. And we will catch you at another exhibit soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye.